Black CEO insulted by billionaire's wife at Ritz-Carlton Gala, then she pulled $4.1 billion from hotels. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. You can't be serious. The woman's laugh cut through the ballroom like glass dragged across marble, sharp, performative, designed to be heard. Crystal chandeliers trembled above long white tables dressed in linen so pristine it looked ceremonial. Hundreds of guests sat frozen mid-motion, forks hovering, champagne bubbles stalling in their flutes. At the center of it all sat a black woman in a burnt orange gown. No entourage. No nameplate. No rush to explain herself. She remained seated as a hotel manager leaned in, his posture apologetic but his hand firm, holding a sleek navy blue card between two fingers as if it were contaminated. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, voice trained to sound polite while delivering judgment. "This card doesn't verify." The billionaire's wife, tall, flawless, dressed in red, threw her head back and laughed again. She pointed openly, delighted. "Oh, this is rich. I knew it. This is a Ritz-Carlton Gala, not a charity raffle. Security, where did you even find her?" Phones lifted around the room. Not discreetly. Hungrily. This was the moment people would rewatch later. Slow down, caption. A public sorting. Who belonged? Who didn't? The black woman finally looked up, not at the wife, not at the crowd, but at the card. Her expression didn't change. No embarrassment. No fear. Just assessment. The manager cleared his throat. "We'll need you to leave the table, ma'am. We can sort this out privately." "Privately," the wife echoed, savoring the word. "Why be discreet now? Everyone should see what happens when someone tries to pass themselves off as something they're not." A few nervous chuckles rippled. Others looked away. The man seated beside the wife, older, silver-haired, the billionaire himself, shifted in his chair. He hadn't laughed. His eyes moved between the manager's hand and the woman who hadn't stood up. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to the story." The manager held the card closer to the light. "We don't have you listed as a sponsor." The woman in orange folded her hands on the table. "Did you check ownership?" The question landed quietly. Too quietly. The wife scoffed. "Ownership?" She leaned forward, bracelets chiming. "Sweetheart, this hotel has been in our circles for decades. That card doesn't own anything." The black woman's gaze finally lifted to meet hers. Calm. Measured. Unimpressed. "It owns you," she said. A hush fell. Even the servers paused. The billionaire frowned. "What did you say?" The manager stiffened, glancing at the man beside the wife. "Sir, we can handle this." "No," the woman in orange said, voice still even. "You've already handled enough." She rose then, not abruptly, not defensively. Chairs scraped as the room adjusted to her movement. Standing, she was eye level with the wife, but her attention returned to the manager. "Scan the card again," she said. "This time, don't check the guest list. Check the ledger." The manager hesitated. His training told him to defer to donors like the woman in red. But something else, tone, certainty, the billionaire's silence made him obey. He tapped at his tablet. Once. Twice. Color drained from his face. He stopped himself. Looked again. This can't be right. The wife smiled wider. What? Still fake? The manager swallowed. This card is registered to a holding entity. And, the wife pressed. And that entity controls the debt note on this property. The room inhaled. The billionaire stood halfway from his chair. What debt note? The manager's hands trembled. The one refinancing the Ritz-Carlton portfolio. It was finalized last quarter. The woman in orange adjusted the cuff of her gown. Finalized, yes. And callable. The wife's smile flickered. You're bluffing. The black woman reached into a small clutch and withdrew her phone. She didn't look at anyone as she tapped once. Then she spoke, not loudly, not angrily. Execute the withdrawal. Across the ballroom, a violin string snapped. That was the moment the air changed, when laughter died, when phones lowered, when the room realized the card had never been fake at all. The silence didn't break right away. It spread. At first, it was just the nearest table guests who had leaned forward, smiles half-formed, suddenly unsure what expression belonged on their faces. Then the quiet rippled outward, swallowing the soft clink of cutlery, the low hum of conversation, even the confidence in the billionaire's wife's posture. The manager stared at his tablet as if it had betrayed him. His finger hovered above the screen, trembling. This entity, he said carefully, choosing each word as though it might detonate, is listed as the primary creditor. The billionaire's wife laughed again, but this time the sound landed wrong. Too loud. Too fast. Creditor, she repeated. Don't be ridiculous. My husband donated half the art in this building. Her husband didn't join her. He was looking at the woman in orange now, really looking. Not at her dress, not at her skin, but at the stillness she carried, the kind that didn't ask permission from a room. He had negotiated enough deals in his lifetime to recognize the posture of someone who already knew the outcome. Which entity? He asked the manager. The manager swallowed. A private holding company. No public branding. No board disclosures. Name it, the billionaire said. The woman in orange answered before the manager could. You won't recognize it, she said. That's intentional. A few guests shifted in their seats. Someone at the far table quietly set their phone face down, as if instinctively withdrawing from the moment. The wife scoffed. So now we're supposed to believe you own the debt on a Ritz-Carlton portfolio. She gestured broadly, inviting the room to laugh with her. Only a handful complied. Most stayed silent. I don't own the debt, the woman replied. I structured it. The distinction mattered. The billionaire heard it. His jaw tightened. The manager cleared his throat. Sir, the debt is bundled through a layered instrument. Callable under specific conditions. He hesitated, then added, conditions that were just met. A faint sound moved through the room, not laughter this time, but calculation. People who had made careers out of reading balance sheets were suddenly doing math in their heads. Who stood where? Which chairs were too close to the fallout? The wife's smile thinned. This is absurd, she said. Even if that were true, which it isn't, you can't just pull billions out of a hotel chain because of a misunderstanding. The woman in orange met her gaze, calm and direct. You're right, she said. Not because of a misunderstanding. She glanced briefly at the manager, then at the security staff who had frozen near the wall. Because of breach. Breach, the billionaire echoed. Yes, she said. Reputational. Operational. Contractual. The manager's tablet chimed softly. He flinched at the sound. Sir, he said to the billionaire, lowering his voice instinctively, we're receiving alerts from corporate. Across the ballroom, a violinist's bow faltered, dragging a thin, uneven note through the air before stopping altogether. The orchestra went still, sensing something they couldn't name. "What kind of alerts?" the billionaire asked. The manager didn't answer right away. He was reading. Scrolling. His face drained further with each line. Liquidity reviews. Lender notifications. "There's a suspension notice." The wife took a step forward. "You're embarrassing us," she snapped at him. "Fix it." He didn't move. The woman in orange adjusted her clutch beneath her arm. "I warned you," she said, not unkindly. "You chose spectacle." The billionaire exhaled slowly. "If you are who you imply," he said, voice low, "this isn't how business is done." She nodded once. "You're right again." Then she looked past him, past the tables and the chandeliers, toward the tall windows overlooking the city. "This isn't business," she said. "It's consequence." Around them, whispers began to form, not gossip, but questions. Who is she? What did she just do? How far does this go? The wife felt it slipping now. Control. Attention. Certainty. "You can't just walk in here," she said sharply, "and rewrite the rules." The woman turned back to her, eyes steady. "I didn't," she said. "I followed them." The manager's tablet chimed again. Louder this time. He looked up, voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, the first tranche has already been flagged." The billionaire closed his eyes for a brief moment, then opened them. When he spoke, the room leaned in. "How much?" The woman in orange answered for him. 4.1 billion, she said. "And counting." That was when the room truly understood. The silence hadn't been waiting for explanation. It had been waiting for the money to move. They didn't know her name yet. That was the part that unsettled them most. In rooms like this, names traveled faster than truth. Surnames opened doors. Foundations softened reputations. Tonight, every guest had arrived armored with context: who funded whom, who married into what, who mattered. Everyone except the woman in orange. She stood there without introduction, without pedigree offered up for inspection. And still, the room bent around her. The billionaire studied her now with the quiet intensity of a man revisiting assumptions he had lived comfortably inside for decades. He had built an empire on knowing who sat across the table before the first handshake. This woman had denied him that advantage. "You said you structured it," he said. "The debt?" "Yes. That kind of structuring doesn't happen quietly." She gave a small nod. "It does when silence is part of the design." Around them, guests pretended not to listen. Too late. Every ear was tuned. Every instinct told them this was no longer a scene they were witnessing, a process. The manager shifted closer to the billionaire, lowering his voice again. "Sir, the holding company doesn't appear on any of our usual registries. It's shielded. Offshore layers. Domestic compliance. It's intentionally invisible." The billionaire's wife crossed her arms, irritation sharpening into something brittle. "So now we're impressed by secrecy," she said. "Plenty of people hide money." "Yes," the woman in orange replied evenly. "But not many hide leverage." The word landed with weight. The billionaire glanced at his wife, not in anger, not yet, but with the first hint of separation. "When was this debt issued?" he asked the manager. 18 months ago. "And refinanced?" 6 months after that." Quietly. The billionaire did the math. He remembered the call. The relief he'd felt when the terms came through better than expected. Lower interest. Flexible covenants. He had praised his advisors for it. He hadn't asked who was on the other side. "You never attended any of the meetings," he said to the woman. "No. You never sent representatives." "I did," she said. "Just not ones you'd notice." She paused, letting that settle. You look for power where it announces itself. I prefer where it compounds. A murmur ran through the room, subtle, uneasy. Some guests recognized that language. Private equity. Quiet capital. The kind that didn't want applause. The manager's tablet chimed again. He flinched less this time. Corporate is requesting immediate clarification. They want to know if this is hostile. The woman smiled faintly. Hostile is an emotional word, she said. This is procedural. The billionaire exhaled through his nose. You're enjoying this? No, she said. I'm correcting it. The wife laughed sharply. Correcting what? A misunderstanding at a dinner table. The woman turned to her fully now. You accused me publicly. You questioned my legitimacy. You involved staff, security, and an audience. That triggers clauses you never bothered to read. She looked around the room. Most people don't. The billionaire's wife opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she seemed unsure which version of herself would land safely: hostess, donor, social authority. None felt sufficient. Who are you? The billionaire asked finally. The question carried no demand. Only necessity. The woman considered him for a moment. I don't trade on names, she said. But since you insist. She reached into her clutch again, slower this time. Not for a phone. For a slim, unmarked card. No logo. No flourish. She placed it gently on the table between them. The billionaire didn't touch it. He read. The manager leaned in, eyes widening as recognition flickered, not of fame, but of classification. Sir, he said carefully, this entity appears repeatedly in our capital stack. It's foundational. The billionaire closed his eyes briefly. Again. When he opened them, something fundamental had shifted. You didn't come here by accident, he said. No, she replied. I came to observe. And I learned enough. Around them, the gala resumed in fragments: forced laughter, clinking glasses, conversations that strained to sound normal. But the center of gravity had moved. The woman in orange turned slightly, preparing to step away. Behind her, the manager's tablet chimed one last time. Sir, he said, voice unsteady now. The withdrawal is accelerating. The billionaire looked at the woman's back, then at his wife, who stood rigid, color draining from her face. For the first time that evening, no one spoke. They were too busy realizing the truth. She hadn't needed to announce who she was. The system already knew. The billionaire's wife was the last to understand what had changed. She felt it, yes, the way the room no longer leaned toward her laughter, the way conversations curved away instead of gathering. But feeling a shift and accepting it were two very different things. Power, to her, had always been loud. Immediate. Confirmed by mirrors and applause. She mistook the quiet for hesitation. This has gone far enough, she said sharply, her voice cutting through the low murmur that had replaced music. You've made your point. The woman in orange paused mid-step but didn't turn around. You embarrassed my family, the wife continued, louder now, reaching for the room. You disrupted a charitable event. And now you expect us to believe you can just destabilize a global brand because your feelings were hurt. A few heads nodded reflexively. Old habits. Old alliances. The woman turned back slowly. My feelings, she repeated. Not mocking. Just precise. Is that what you think this is? The wife lifted her chin. What else could it be? The billionaire watched his wife carefully now, the way one watches someone walking toward a door marked exit without realizing it opens inward. Enough, he said quietly. She ignored him. You don't belong in rooms like this, she said, the words sharpened by desperation. And you certainly don't get to rewrite the rules just because you feel slighted. The manager stiffened. The security staff exchanged uneasy glances. A few guests leaned back, sensing impact. The woman in orange met the wife's gaze without blinking. "You keep calling this a room," she said. "It's a system." She took a step closer, not aggressive, not challenging. Measured. "And you don't get to decide who belongs in systems you don't control." The wife laughed, brittle now. "Control." She gestured around wildly. "My name is on this event. My family's name is on half the donors in this room. We built this." The woman nodded once. "You decorated it?" The room went still again. That kind of stillness, the kind that knows something irreversible has just been said. The wife's face flushed. "Get her out," she snapped, turning toward security. "Now." No one moved. "I said now," she repeated. The younger guard shifted his weight but didn't step forward. His eyes flicked to the manager. The manager looked at the billionaire. The billionaire didn't look at anyone. The woman in orange spoke again, softer this time. "This is the part where you stop." The wife rounded on her. "Or what?" The question hung there, raw and exposed. "Or," the woman said, "you make it personal." The billionaire closed his eyes. The wife scoffed. "Don't threaten me." "I'm not," the woman replied. "I'm warning you." The manager's tablet vibrated longer this time, a sustained alert that drew eyes like gravity. He glanced down, then up, his voice barely steady. "Sir, the secondary lenders are reacting. They're pulling exposure." A ripple of shock moved through the room. Secondary lenders didn't move unless they smelled blood. The billionaire's wife turned sharply. "That's impossible." The woman in orange tilted her head. "No," she said. "That's momentum." The billionaire stepped forward at last. "We can talk privately," he said, voice low, controlled. "This doesn't need to escalate." "It already has," the woman replied. "You just didn't notice when." She looked at him, then not unkindly, not triumphantly. "You weren't the target." His breath caught, just slightly. The wife laughed again, shrill. "So this is about me?" "Yes," the woman said simply. The word hit harder than any insult. "You confused access with authority," the woman continued. "You confused hosting with ownership. And you confused humiliation with power." The wife's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The woman stepped back, reclaiming space. "I came here prepared to invest. To partner. To expand what already existed." She gestured lightly around the room. "You turned it into a spectacle." The manager's tablet chimed again. Then again. A cascade. "Sir," he whispered, panic now unmistakable, "we're losing coverage. Internationally." The billionaire looked at his wife. Really looked at her. For the first time, he didn't see confidence. He saw liability. "This was your final mistake," the woman in orange said, not as judgment, but as fact. She turned away once more, walking toward the exit. Conversations collapsed behind her. No one followed. No one dared. Behind her, the wife's voice cracked. "You can't just walk away from this." The woman didn't stop. "I already did," she said. And in her wake, the room finally understood. The insult hadn't cost them dignity. It had cost them everything else. She didn't hurry. That was what unsettled them most as she crossed the ballroom. No rush, no glance back, no urgency to explain. The doors ahead seemed to open before she reached them, attendants stepping aside on instinct rather than instruction. Behind her, the gala struggled to remember how to breathe. The billionaire stood motionless, eyes fixed on the space she had occupied, as if the air itself might tell him what he'd missed. His wife remained rigid, fury hardening into disbelief. Around them, conversations had collapsed into fragments, half sentences, aborted laughter, phones buzzing with messages no one wanted to read aloud. At the edge of the room, the woman in orange stopped. Not because she was blocked. Because her phone vibrated. Once. She looked down at the screen, thumb hovering for a moment, not in hesitation, but in calibration. Timing mattered. Sequence mattered. She stepped aside, just beyond the reach of the chandelier's glow, and answered. Yes, she said quietly. On the other end, the voice was crisp, efficient. No panic. No drama. The machinery of consequence. Confirmation requested, the voice said. Full execution. She glanced back once, only once, at the room behind her. At the tables. The faces. The wife still standing as if volume alone could restore gravity. Yes, she replied. Proceed. A pause. Then, understood. She ended the call. Inside the ballroom, the manager's tablet lit up like a warning flare. He stared at it, then at the billionaire, his voice dropping to something raw. Sir, the withdrawal order has cleared initial compliance. How fast? The billionaire asked. Faster than expected. The wife stepped forward. Stop saying that word, she snapped. What withdrawal? The manager swallowed. The capital. Silence hit again, but this time it wasn't anticipation. It was recognition. Across the room, phones buzzed in unison. Not filming now. Reading. Alerts. Emails. Notifications marked urgent. Someone near the bar whispered, "Is this real?" Another answered, "It's already live." The billionaire closed his eyes, just for a moment. When he opened them, the room had changed shape. Not because of the money, but because of who now knew they didn't control it. Outside, the woman stepped into the night air. Cool. Clean. Honest. The city hummed below, indifferent to chandeliers and galas and names etched into programs. Her phone vibrated again. First tranche is moving, the voice said. Secondary exposure reacting. Expected, she replied. Media risk. Minimal, she said. They won't understand it until morning. A beat. Total figure. She didn't answer immediately. She watched traffic move below, headlights threading through the dark like logic finding its way through noise. 4.1 billion, she said. Let it run. She ended the call and slipped the phone back into her clutch. Behind the glass doors, the gala was unraveling. The orchestra had stopped pretending. Guests were standing now, clustering, whispering names that had never been printed on invitations. The wife's voice rose again, sharp, frantic, but it no longer commanded the room. The billionaire turned toward the exit, as if drawn by something he couldn't name. But she was already gone. What remained inside wasn't outrage or spectacle. It was the slow, dawning awareness of a single truth. The moment she made the call wasn't when everything changed. It was when everyone else finally noticed. The money didn't move like a wave. It moved like a system waking up. Across time zones, servers authenticated requests that had been dormant for months, clauses surfacing like pressure points finally pressed. Compliance checks cleared not because they were rushed, but because they had been prepared for this exact moment. The machinery had been built quietly, patiently, waiting for one human decision to give it permission. Inside the ballroom, the manager stood frozen, tablet glowing in his hands. Lines of text scrolled faster than he could read, each notification compounding the last. Liquidity adjustments. Exposure warnings. Counterparty inquiries flagged high priority. Sir, he said again, voice hoarse now, this isn't isolated. The billionaire turned slowly. Define isolated. It's not just this property, the manager replied. It's the portfolio. The word landed with weight. At the nearest table, a woman in pearls whispered, "Portfolio," to her husband. He didn't answer. He was already checking his phone, eyes narrowing as he read something he didn't like. The wife laughed, loud and sharp, as if volume could shatter math. "You're all overreacting," she snapped. "Deals don't collapse in real time." The billionaire didn't look at her. "Actually," the manager said carefully, "they do. When the capital is structured to unwind." The orchestra's conductor lowered his hands completely. No one noticed. No one cared. The room had found a new rhythm, one dictated by alerts and whispers. Phones buzzed again. And again. A man near the windows muttered, "My banker just texted me." Another replied, "Mine too." The words credit review began circulating, followed closely by risk exposure. The billionaire took a breath. "Who else is reacting?" he asked. "Everyone who shares exposure," the manager said. "They don't want to be last." The wife's confidence cracked. "Last to what?" "To exit," the manager replied. Across the room, a senior executive from a rival hotel group quietly stood and slipped out, already on a call. Others noticed. Movements multiplied. Chairs scraped. Coats were gathered. The gala had stopped being an event and become a liability. The billionaire turned to his wife at last. "You said this was handled." She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time that night, she had nothing ready. Outside, in a black car idling beneath the portico, the woman in orange sat with her phone resting lightly in her palm. The city lights reflected off the window like distant stars, unconcerned, precise. "Status?" she asked. "Acceleration confirmed," came the reply. "Secondary lenders have triggered protective exits. Tertiary exposure is following." She nodded once. "As expected." "There's chatter," the voice added. "They're trying to identify you." "They will," she said. "Later." A pause. "Do we slow it?" "No," she replied. "Momentum is integrity now." Inside the ballroom, the billionaire watched donors disappear one by one. He understood this language. He had used it before, just never against himself. "This wasn't personal," he said quietly, more to the room than to his wife. The manager didn't respond. He was too busy watching numbers fall into alignment. Outside, the woman closed her eyes briefly, not in relief, not in triumph. In confirmation. The system was doing what it had been designed to do. And the room she had left behind was finally learning the difference between wealth that decorates and wealth that decides. The realization didn't arrive all at once. It fractured. At first, it showed up as confusion, people rereading the same messages, hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something less dangerous. Then it hardened into fear as phones kept buzzing, each vibration another confirmation that this wasn't a rumor moving through a room. It was a system moving through accounts. The billionaire stood at the center of it, hands braced against the back of a chair he no longer intended to sit in. Around him, donors spoke in hushed voices, no longer careful about discretion, only about distance. "How exposed are we?" someone asked quietly. "Too exposed," came the reply. The manager's tablet chimed again, and this time he didn't flinch. He'd crossed that threshold already. "Sir," he said, voice steady in a way that suggested resignation, "we've received formal notices. Multiple partners are invoking review clauses." "Partners," the wife snapped. "They don't just walk away." "They do," the manager said, "when they're afraid of being last." The word echoed. Last. Across the room, a prominent donor caught the billionaire's eye and offered a tight, apologetic nod before turning away, already dialing a number. Another followed. Then another. Loyalty drained from the room, not dramatically, but efficiently. The billionaire's wife watched it happen, disbelief giving way to panic. "This is insane," she whispered. "You'll fix this. You always do." He didn't answer. He was watching the exits the way people left without ceremony, without confrontation. Not angry. Not offended. Strategic. That frightened him more than outrage ever could. "This doesn't make sense," she pressed, grabbing his arm. "Who is she?" He shook his head slowly. "Someone we should have recognized." The orchestra packed away their instruments in silence. Staff whispered into headsets, instructions overlapping, plans unraveling. What had begun as a gala was dissolving into an evacuation. The manager stepped closer. "Sir, corporate is asking if they should prepare a statement." The billionaire closed his eyes. "What would it say?" "That we're reassessing liquidity," the manager replied. He almost laughed. Almost. Across the city, screens refreshed. Numbers adjusted. Analysts frowned. Somewhere far removed from chandeliers and marble, decisions were being made without emotion, without ceremony. Outside, the woman in orange stood beneath the portico, the night air cool against her skin. Her phone buzzed again. "They're realizing," the voice said. She nodded. "They always do. Eventually. Some are asking if there's a path back." She considered that for a moment. "There was," she said. "Before the spectacle." Inside the ballroom, the wife's voice rose again, pleading now, stripped of its edge. "We can apologize," she said. "Publicly. Privately. However she wants." The billionaire looked at her, and in that look was something she had never seen before, not anger, not disappointment, but assessment. "She didn't want apologies," he said quietly. "She wanted accountability." The manager's tablet chimed one last time. He looked up, eyes grave. "Sir, the cascade is complete." The billionaire exhaled, long and slow. Around him, the room had emptied enough to reveal its true state, not glamorous, not powerful. Just exposed. And in that moment, they all understood the same thing. The damage wasn't coming. It had already arrived. They were simply late to noticing it. They said her name out loud for the first time in a whisper. Not on stage. Not into a microphone. Not with pride. The billionaire stood alone now at the edge of the ballroom, watching staff dismantle the illusion piece by piece. Table cards collected. Champagne abandoned. The gala reduced to logistics. He had just ended a call he hadn't expected to make, one where he listened more than he spoke. When he turned back, the manager was standing there, posture straighter than before, eyes clear with something that looked like acceptance. "Sir," the manager said carefully, "we've confirmed the identity behind the holding entity." The billionaire didn't ask him to continue. He already knew the tone. "It's her," the manager said anyway. "She's the principal. Sole authority." The wife looked up sharply. "Her who?" The manager hesitated, then spoke the name quietly. "Not for the room. Just for them." The wife staggered back a step as if struck. "That's not possible," she said. She's never." "She doesn't attend," the billionaire finished for her. "She doesn't announce." The pieces aligned with brutal clarity. The invisible capital. The favorable terms. The lenders who had answered calls at impossible hours. The deals that had worked when logic said they shouldn't. He had praised his advisors for years. They had been praising her. "She owns the structure," the manager continued. "Not just the debt. The mechanism." The wife's voice dropped to a whisper. "So when she said the card wasn't fake," the billionaire said. "It was access." The room felt smaller now. Not because of bodies, but because of truth. The kind that collapses ceilings. Around them, the last guests were leaving, no longer pretending. Phones pressed to ears. Jackets half on. Faces tight with calculation. This wasn't scandal anymore. It was repositioning. The billionaire sat down heavily in the chair he had abandoned earlier. "She didn't come to destroy us," he said slowly. The manager nodded. "No, sir. She came prepared to invest." Silence answered that. Outside, the woman stood beneath the overhang, the city stretching endlessly beyond her. Her phone buzzed again, different tone this time. "They've identified you," the voice said. She smiled faintly. "I assumed they would." "There's concern." "Good," she replied. "Concern means they're paying attention." A pause. "Public confirmation." "Not tonight," she said. "Let them sit with it." Inside the ballroom, the wife sank into a chair, hands shaking now. "She did this because of me," she said. The billionaire didn't correct her. He looked instead at the empty space where the woman had stood, so calm, so precise. He finally understood what had unnerved him from the beginning. She hadn't been reacting. She had been revealing. Outside, the woman adjusted her coat and stepped into the waiting car. As the door closed, the driver pulled away smoothly, merging into traffic without spectacle. No one followed. No one could. Behind her, the Ritz-Carlton glowed as it always had, lights on, doors open, facade intact. But inside its systems, inside its ledgers and contracts and assumptions, something irreversible had been written. They knew her name now. And they finally understood what it meant. By morning, the city had already adjusted. Markets opened. Analysts refreshed dashboards. Headlines hesitated, careful with verbs, cautious with blame. Words like reassessment, liquidity shift, strategic withdrawal appeared first, neutral and bloodless. But beneath the language, everyone understood what had happened. A $4.1 billion illusion had evaporated. Inside the Ritz-Carlton, the ballroom looked smaller in daylight. Chandeliers dimmed. Chairs stacked. The remnants of the gala reduced to forgotten place cards and half-drunk glasses. Staff moved quietly, professionally, as if sound itself might worsen the damage. The billionaire arrived early, alone. No entourage. No advisors. Just a man walking through a room that no longer answered to his name. He stopped where the table had been, the one where laughter had felt permanent. It hadn't been. His wife didn't come down. She remained upstairs, blinds drawn, replaying the night in fragments she couldn't reorder. She would apologize later, to friends, to boards, to people who no longer returned her calls. None of it would land. Apologies didn't reverse systems. Across the city, lenders finalized exits. Committees convened. The word exposure moved from abstract to urgent. Some losses were contained. Others weren't. Careers shifted quietly. Invitations stopped arriving. And somewhere between all of it, the woman in orange returned to her routine. No press conference. No statement. No victory lap. She sat at a desk later that afternoon, reviewing reports with the same calm she'd carried into the gala. The withdrawal had done what it was designed to do: not punish, not humiliate, but correct an imbalance that had mistaken decorum for authority. Her phone buzzed once more. "They're asking if there's a path forward," the voice said. She considered that. "Not long." "There will be," she replied. "Just not with them in control." A pause. "And the wife?" "She'll be remembered," the woman said. "For the wrong reason." The call ended. That evening, the billionaire stood before a window in his office, city lights blinking without apology. He finally understood the lesson he had avoided for years, the one no gala could teach. Power didn't announce itself. It didn't raise its voice. It didn't need a stage. It waited. The woman had never needed to prove she belonged in the room. She had owned the terms that allowed the room to exist. And when those terms were violated, she hadn't argued. She had adjusted the math. Weeks later, a quiet restructuring would be announced. New partners. New governance. A statement about values and respect. The words would sound sincere enough. But those who had been there would remember something else. They would remember the silence. The card held between two fingers. The single phone call. And the moment they learned too late that dignity, once tested, responds not with noise, but with consequence.